Welcome to the Leader's Edge podcast. I'm your host, Chris Kolenda, retired Army colonel, combat leader, author, and speaker. I work with leaders who want to create unshakable business endurance. So tune in as I translate powerful leadership lessons from the battlefield and apply them to your business. From Gettysburg and Normandy to your next biggest business challenges and opportunities, this podcast helps you gain the clarity, confidence, and competitive edge to steer with purpose and win decisively. Ready to sharpen your leadership? Let's dive in. This time we're going to talk about ways to build an unstoppable workforce. So let's go to the practical wisdom framework. Last episode, we discussed upstream thinking and gave you some tools to do that. Now, on this episode, we're going to focus on enthusiastic engagement. So enthusiastic engagement is part of empowering oversight. It helps you move from micromanagement to igniting ingenuity. There are some great examples of igniting ingenuity through enthusiastic engagement and empowering oversight in the Antietam and Gettysburg battlefields. Let's check this out. When you want to create an unstoppable workforce, building an enthusiastic engagement is a vital part of that. And here's a question for you. How passionately do your employees meet or exceed expectations? Or are they just kind of doing the minimum to get by, the so-called quiet quitting? Well, Gallup has recently come out with their global workforce survey. And according to this most recent study by Gallup, 69% of American employees say that they are unengaged at work. They're mailing it in. They are productive less than half of the time at work. So you're losing an extraordinary amount of potential productivity due to unengagement. Only 31% say they're engaged. So imagine you have a rowboat and you've got a 10-person crew. So you're the one that's trying to get people to actually row the boat. In this analogy, with these numbers, you've got 3 people who are furiously rowing the boat and probably 6 people with their oars up out of the water, just kind of staring at them and watching the other 3 people row. And then finally, you may even have one person, somebody who's super disengaged, that is trying to put a hole in the bottom of the boat. What if you could get 70% of your workforce engaged? So you had 7 people pulling on the oars, maybe only 3 that are staring at them, wondering what to do. So how do you do that? Well, there is something that happens at the white line here, where people move from being unengaged to being engaged. And so that's what we want to explore today, is what happens on that white line. Because when you own that white line, when you master that white line, you move people into engaged, and it is going to radically increase their productivity. A great example of this is Colonel Joshua Chamberlain on the Battle of Gettysburg. Chamberlain was a colonel of the 20th Maine Regiment, and he's marching north up towards Gettysburg. And just before, on the eve of the battle, Chamberlain is handed 120 deserters from a different Maine regiment, 2nd Maine Regiment. And these soldiers had thought they signed 2-year enlistments when they actually had signed 3-year enlistments. And so when the rest of the 2nd Maine Regiment is heading home at the end of their 2-year enlistment, these 120 thought they should be able to go home too. Little did they know that they had signed a 3-year enlistment. So now they're arrested as deserters, and these 120 deserters are marched up to Chamberlain's formation, and Chamberlain is told, you're going to take charge of these 120 deserters, and you can shoot them if you want to. Now, Chamberlain realized that if he shot these guys, he'd never be able to go back home to Maine. And his force had started out at about 1,000 people, and over a series of battles had dwindled to 250. And now he's given 120 unengaged, disgruntled employees. And Chamberlain's trying to figure out, well, what the heck do I do with these guys? And so Chamberlain's got some options. Number one is he could just keep them under guard. And that would require a significant amount of manpower to guard these deserters, manpower he can't afford to lose as he's marching into battle. Second, he could let them go, presumably, forgive them, let them go home. That would then put him under some significant problems. Third option is he could try to gain their buy-in. He could try to get them to join ranks. And so Chamberlain agrees to meet with the 120, and he listens to their complaints. He makes sure that they've been fed, they've been taken care of. He hears what they've got to say. And ultimately, Chamberlain said, look, I can't do anything about this right now, since we're marching into a big conflict. And he talks about the stakes of the conflict. And he says, if you pick up muskets and join ranks, then I will see what I can do to get these charges dropped. Because the penalty for desertion was generally a firing squad, execution by firing squad. And so Chamberlain did some very interesting things. First of all, he makes sure that they're taken care of. Second of all, he explains to them exactly what he wants them to do and how he's going to advocate on their behalf afterwards. And so he's giving them some clarity about what he wants. He is increasing their confidence that he's going to take care of them. And he is showing that he's going to help them advance their interests. After that talk, 113 of them picked up muskets and said, okay, we're going to join. We're going to fight in this battle for you. And as the battle's coming closer and closer, 4 more decided they were also going to pick up muskets and fight in the battle. So out of the 120, 117 of them said, we're going to stand and fight. We're going to stand our ground. Now, fast forward a couple of days to July 2nd of 1863, Chamberlain and his now 367 soldiers are at the Little Round Top, so the extreme left flank of the Union lines. And that is just exactly where the Confederate main attack took place. And so you get wave after wave after wave of Confederates attacking Chamberlain's position. And Chamberlain's forces is just barely holding on by their fingernails. And they're running out of ammunition. Chamberlain gets to the point where they are so low on ammunition that there is nothing they can do except try to hold off the Confederates with bayonets. And if Chamberlain's position is overrun, it threatens a whole Union army. It could fall like a bunch of dominoes. So Chamberlain sees the enemy forming up again, and he says, well, we could either stand here and try to fight him with bayonets, option 1. Option 2 is we take the fight to the enemy. So Chamberlain orders fixed bayonets, and just as the rebels are coming up the hill to attack, Chamberlain orders the charge, meeting downhill. So all that momentum crashing into the Confederates. They were totally surprised by this maneuver, and the Confederate attack broke. And ultimately that ends the battle on day 2 of Gettysburg. And Joshua Chamberlain saved the day. His force probably saved the Union Army that day. Now, had it not been for Chamberlain's ability to gain the buy-in, the enthusiastic engagement of those 117 soldiers, the Battle of Gettysburg would have turned out very differently. Okay, so let's drill down at exactly how Chamberlain did that. Gaining buy-in consists of 3 elements. The first element is you've got to have compelling clarity about what exactly you want them to buy into. Chamberlain provided that. And the formula that you can use is X so that Y. X is what you want them to do. So that is a prompt to make sure that you describe the Y, the results, outcomes that you want to achieve by doing X. And if there's a deadline, by when. The second element is enlightened self-interest. So people have to believe that they are going to be better off by buying it. When Chamberlain showed that he was going to take care of them, And he actually did some acts that took care of them and said, I'm going to advocate on your behalf. They believed him. They believed that they were going to be better off following this guy into battle than continuing to stay on the sidelines. And third, you have to have complete confidence that this plan is going to work, that buying in is going, the X of the buying in is going to work. And so I've labeled the intersections 1, 2, 3, 4 to show what happens when something's missing and also when you have everything together. So if you're at intersection 1 where there's clarity and people believe that they're better off, but they don't have complete confidence that this is going to work, people are going to apply no effort. I've been working with a fire department that's had a major problem between their management and their union. The relationships got so poisonous that they didn't know what to do anymore. They all recognized that they would be better off with a productive relationship. They knew that they wanted the productive relationship. So they were at intersection number 1. Problem is they had no confidence that they could ever get there. And so they asked me to come help. And we took a very similar approach to the one I used with Afghan insurgents, getting Afghan elders and insurgents to buy in, which is we've slowly built trust and confidence. Small steps lead to bigger steps, lead to bigger steps. And now that management team and the union are working together hand in glove for the common good of their organization. So that's what happens when there's no confidence. If you're at intersection number 2, where you have clarity and confidence, but people don't believe they're going to be better off. In fact, people believe that they may be worse off with this game plan, with this change that you want to make, then of course you're going to get resistance. At a minimum, you may get compliance only behavior. People just go through the motions, do the minimum. Chances are they're going to resist. They're going to push back against you. So if you're seeing resistance to change, it's because people believe that they are going to be worse off if the change takes place. If you're in number 3, where people believe they're going to be better off, they have confidence that the change is going to work, but they don't have any clarity about what that change is, then what you're going to get is confusion. So people know they want to get something done. They believe they're going to be better off, but they don't have clarity about what it is and how you're going to go about it. Then you're going to create mass confusion where you get some people just simply standing still, waiting to be told what to do, and others going off 100 miles an hour in the wrong direction. So neither of which we want. Where we want to be is in intersection number 4. Intersection number 4 is the sweet spot. And this is where we gain buy-in. This is how we get enthusiastic engagement. And what we see there are people picking up the oars and rowing to the best of their ability. And they're rowing at the right cadence and the right timing so that everything's operating together as a team. This is what Joshua Chamberlain did to gain the enthusiastic engagement of 117 out of 120 deserters, saving the Union on July 2nd of 1863. So let me ask you this question. What are you doing to gain the buy-in in your organization? What sort of pushback or what sort of resistance or what sort of challenges are you finding gaining buy-in for change? And how are you going to go about dealing with that, with those challenges? This is exactly the kinds of things that we talk about on the battlefield at Gettysburg, at Little Round Top. And I guarantee you, when you're standing on the ground where Joshua Chamberlain stood and you are diagnosing and addressing problems, gaining buy-in for change, getting the employee enthusiastic engagement, these are lessons that you and your team will never forget, and you will draw on them for years and years to come to talk about how to improve employee workplace performance. Day 1 at Gettysburg was in many ways a story of 2 cavalry commanders. And I mentioned them briefly in episode 1. So on the Union side was General John Buford, and on the Confederate side was Jeb Stuart. Buford was the Union commander and Union cavalry commander. Here's a picture of him here. And his job was to track Lee's army as they moved through the Shenandoah Valley and spilled out into Pennsylvania. And that's exactly what Buford did. He tracked Lee's movements very carefully. So the Union always knew where Lee's army was. And so General Meade, who was the commander of the Army of the Potomac, the Union forces, wanted to fight in an area closer to Frederick, Maryland. Some very great ground there. When Buford picked up Lee's movements and saw that they were converging on Gettysburg, he knew that he needed to get the Union forces up there, because what he saw near Gettysburg was this huge piece of high ground called Cemetery Ridge. And when we go out there together, you'll see this. And, Buford's like, this is the great ground. This is the unbeatable position, that if we take this, there is no way that the Confederates, whom we outnumber, are going to be able to move us off of there. But I've got to give Meade time to get up there. And so Buford, on his own initiative, moves forward, dismounts his cavalry, sets up blocking positions on the roads heading into Gettysburg, and he holds off the Confederate attacks for the better part of the morning until a Union corps could come up and relieve Buford's cavalry in position, and then continue taking the fight, absorbing these Confederate losses, while Meade and about 70,000 soldiers climbed onto and established their base on Cemetery Ridge. By contrast, Jeb Stuart, who was Lee's cavalry commander and also supposed to give Lee information about the union of the Union forces, was busy riding around the entire Union army. And so after the Battle of Chancellorsville, Stuart felt like he didn't perform really well, and he needed to salvage his reputation. And so he had ridden around the Union forces before. He decides that, well, I can make some headlines and recover my reputation by doing so again. And destroying Union supplies and stuff like that along the way. So he goes south and east of the Army of the Potomac, thinking that he'll be able to ride around them pretty quickly. Well, the problem is, when 70 or 100,000 soldiers uncoil over time and over space, it becomes a very large column indeed. And so Stuart didn't complete his ride around until the evening of July 2nd. So he didn't report into Lee till the evening of July 2nd. So Lee had no idea where the Federal forces were. He thought initially that that Buford's force in front of Gettysburg was just Pennsylvania militia, that they would be very easily just sort of steamrolled. But instead they ran into a buzzsaw, and it consumed Lee the entire first day. The second day, he's also fighting blind. And so when Lee orders one of his corps to attack towards Little Round Top, they take the wrong road. Now, cavalry is supposed to be able to guide people to the correct roads, but since there's no cavalry there, they stumbled around, missed the right road. And so it took them a couple hours to get uncoiled and back on track, which gave the Union even more time to establish and fortify their positions on Little Round Top and on Cemetery Ridge. These are two contrasting stories about initiative, and about how do you ignite the right kind of initiative so that your employees are advancing the common good, and avoid the wrong kind of initiative where they are detracting from it. So we're into empowering oversight because we want to help create this unstoppable workforce and this unbeatable positioning. And we want to help move from micromanagement to igniting ingenuity, but we want to do it in a way that we are not creating chaos. And so part of enthusiastic engagement is giving people a clear set of boundaries for how they contribute to the common good and what they need to avoid doing. When you look at how we ignite ingenuity, it is a 3-circled Venn diagram. And I call it creating or igniting disciplined initiative. So you want initiative, you want that initiative disciplined by the common good. And so 3 circles are clarity, is clarity about the common good. So people have to know what you're trying to achieve overall. And so by common good, that's shorthand for me for your mission, your goals, your standards. So that's what common good encapsulates: mission, vision, goals, and standards. The second element that you got to have is backup. People have to believe that you've got their backs, that you're going to support them. If they're going to take initiative, that you're going to support them. And the third is agency. They have to believe that they've got the authority to take initiative, to try new things, to innovate. And so we could use our 1, 2, 3, 4s to see what happens when something's missing. If somebody's clear about the common good and they believe that you're going to back them up, but they don't believe that they have the agency to do anything, then they're just going to stand still, going to wring their hands and complain that they can't make any difference. If you're at intersection number 2, where clarity about the common good and there's agency, but they don't think you're going to back them up. So they have the freedom to innovate. You've told them they have the freedom to innovate. They know what you want to achieve, but they worry that if they make a mistake or it doesn't go right, you're going to throw them under the bus. Then what happens is people are going to fear. And they are not going to try new things because they fear that they're going to screw up and get thrown under the bus. If you're in intersection number 3, where people are confident that you're going to back them up, they have agency to do something, to innovate, but they're not clear about the common good, or they're not aligned on that, then what you get here is freelancing. This was the Jeb Stuart problem. He was freelancing because he was not completely committed to the common good. And the result, it cost Lee at Gettysburg significantly. Number 4 is where you have disciplined initiative. This is what we see with Buford. He understood the common good. He was committed to it. He knew that Meade and Reynolds were going to back him up, and he had the agency to make decisions and to essentially secure the high ground and create the unbeatable position there on Cemetery Ridge that led to the battle, that led to victory at Gettysburg. Okay, so how do we make this happen? How do we create more Bufords and avoid the sort of Stuart level freelancing that costs them so dearly? Well, a lot of it is how we delegate. And there are two methods to delegate successfully. And so very quickly describing these two, model 1 is a more hands-on approach where you're going to provide guidance. So you're going to provide guidance in the X so that Y by when format. And then you're going to ask for a confirmation brief from your subordinate, from your direct report. In your own words, describe for me the mission, what we're trying to accomplish, and give me a sense of the risks and opportunities that you see in doing this. So they're going to reply to you, and through that dialogue, you're going to confirm that they know exactly what you want them to accomplish by when. And the next step is, okay, think it over for 24 hours or whatever, and then describe for me your game plan for how you're going to go about doing this and what support you need for me to be most successful. And so you're doing another check by having them talk through their game plan with you. And you are also making it very clear that you are setting them up to be successful because you want to make sure that they have got the resources, guidance, and support that they need to execute this and to achieve your outcomes. And then you're going to agree, step 4, on a rhythm of check-ins, where you'll look at the progress and, again, make sure that you adjust the level of support so you can help them succeed as quickly as possible. And so that completes the circuit. This model is great for new subordinates, maybe ones who are new on the job, you just haven't quite had that trusting relationship yet. Model 2 is for subordinates, for employees, for direct reports, that you have a trusting relationship. They understand the common good. And what you want to do is give them the widest possible latitude for them to be able to make decisions. So you're going to provide them with the guidance in the appropriate X so that Y by when format. And then you are going to co-create what I call the dance floor. So the dance floor is going to consist of things like time. So what are their boundaries? You can agree on boundaries. Time, money, people. You may have regulatory or legal boundaries. You may have operational boundaries. And those are the things that you're going to discuss and you're going to co-create and agree on. And with the dance floor, your direct report has, let me get the highlighter. Your direct report has authority to do anything that they want inside the dance floor. So that's their latitude. They don't have to report. They don't have to say, Mother, may I, anything like that. They've got the latitude and authority to make decisions. Now, when it approaches the yellow line, that's where they need to report. Say, hey, boss, I am coming up on a concern about time or running out of money or whatever it is. I'm coming up against this boundary and I want to notify you so that we can have a conversation on whether we are able to extend the boundary or whether we need to change the scope of the project or whatever. So this gives you a fail-safe where you have confidence that if they're going to come up against a boundary, they're going to report to you so you can work with them on solving the problem. And it avoids the anxiety that they're going to cross one of these boundaries, because when they do, then that becomes a big problem. It becomes your problem. So these are two ways to delegate like a boss, if you will, and so that your subordinates have the disciplined initiative where they know exactly the latitude that they've got, and you have the confidence that they are able to exercise initiative in ways that advance the common good. So my question for you is, how effective, how passionately are your subordinates advancing your common good? How much confidence do they have that they have the agency and the backup to innovate and not worrying about getting cut off the knees? So another reason why historical analogies are so awesome is because we can tee up these sort of conversations, which we'll do on battlefields like Antietam and Gettysburg or other places. And it will drive a conversation with you and your leadership team about how do we delegate in ways that bring out the best in our employees. Thanks for tuning in to the Leader's Edge podcast. If you found today's episode valuable, please be sure to subscribe and leave a review, because it helps more leaders like you find their edge. Do you want to take these lessons further? Well, you can visit my website, chriskolenda.com, for resources, support, and adventure offsites that build unbeatable positioning, help you create an unstoppable workforce, and give you the tools for unwavering inspiration. Until next time, stay decisive, stay inspired, and keep leading from the front.